Tomorrow's technology today, securely wired to the cloud. Welcome to our Microsoft 365 training series. As a gold certified Microsoft partner, we will walk you through the latest updates, tips, and tricks for Microsoft products.
Hello, everyone. We would like to welcome you to our training today on Microsoft Power Automate. And we are going to be joined by two presenters today. We have our very own Katie Kramer, who does our other training webinars and focuses on the Microsoft 365 products. And we also have Rafe Johnson with us today. So we will be recording this session and we will share it with all of you tomorrow morning, and it will also be posted so you can share it as well. And if you have any questions, go ahead and type those into the Q&A. I will watch that Q&A and we will make sure to get those answered. And without further ado, here is Rafe Johnson and Katie Kramer with Microsoft Power Automate.
Perfect. Katie, any final or any beginning words before we get started into the demo and showing off what Power Automate can do today?
No, I am super excited though for just to introduce people to Power Automate and just show them the tools that they have available to them within their Microsoft 365 subscription. So
perfect. Let's jump right on in. All right, sounds good. So Power Automate. You also may know it as Flow, and it is probably one of the most powerful tools within Microsoft 365 and the Power Platform suite. What is it? Well, really, it is what you make it. The main goal is whenever you have content that you want to put within anywhere within Microsoft, whether that be SharePoint for your file storage, whether that be SharePoint lists for your data, your content, or even if you're using something like Microsoft Planner or Teams, it is a way for you to connect all of the different endpoints within Microsoft and do a lot of these automations that you might be doing manually by hand. So think of those administrative tasks that might take 5, 10, 15 minutes out of your day, which doesn't seem like very much, but if you really look at across the year, how much time you're probably spending doing a lot of these manual tasks, Power Automate really comes in to help save you time and make an automation that you can run whenever you need to. You can have it on an automated schedule, really helping you save time and also connect all of the different tools, because let's be honest, there's a lot of products within the Microsoft world and bringing it all together is the name of the game. I get asked quite a bit, what can Power Automate do? And I usually respond with, what do you want it to do? It is really that open, and there's a lot of connectors already in place. To give you the best idea of some examples that you can use it for, on today's demo, we're going to build a simple Microsoft form. We're then going to build a SharePoint list where that information is going to be stored, and I'll show you how to easily connect it. So hopefully it gets the juices flowing, the brain thinking about all of the different things that you can do. And of course, what I'm showing you today is not the end all be all. There's thousands of connectors, thousands of different flows that you can use, but just wanted to give you an idea since we don't have too much time today together. So without further ado, let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. And Katie, are you able to see my screen?
I can see it.
Perfect, that's what I wanted to hear. So on our demo tenant today, to get to Power Automate, really all you need to do is click on your waffle or the 9 circles in the upper left, however you want to call it, and then you will see within all of your apps something called Power Automate. Power Automate used to be known as Flow, so if you are looking through documentation, it could be interchanged depending on when that document was originally created. Just remember, Power Automate, Flow, we're talking about the same thing here. Before we get into actually building our flow, we need to build the source or where information is going to be coming from. So for that, I have already went to Microsoft Forms, which if you're familiar with it, you can find it within your waffle as well, is a really quick, easy way to get information into Microsoft, get it within your organization, so then we can do something with it. The form that I have here is the demo Power Automate for today's session. Let's add some parts in here where we can get information. So let's click on the new plus. We're going to go to text. And here, let's say we want someone's name. All we need to do is put in the name field. We can also say maybe we want to add another field called email. We can also add in another text, and maybe we want to do, why are you reaching out to us today? These are just some demo topics, words that I have in here. Of course, within forms. You can really add whatever type of input information that you're looking to receive. It's pretty basic, pretty easy, but this is what we have within our form. What we now need to do is have a database, a place where this information can flow into, so then we can export it to Excel. We can look at it in a graph, in a chart view, and how we can do that is if we go to a SharePoint site. SharePoint, if you're familiar with the Microsoft world, you probably know it as first of all, an intranet. You can add a graphic user interface to your SharePoint sites. You can also use it for your document repository storage of your company files. On top of that, if I were to just go to my demo SharePoint site that I have built, you can also, if you go to the new in the upper left, create a list. A SharePoint list is going to be similar to an online version of Excel almost. Think of rows and columns and a place to put this data. You could also think of it as a mini SQL database if you're more familiar with that. Just a place for us to hold the data and then we can work with it. So I'm going to create a new list here. I'm going to create a blank list and let's call it the exact same name as our form, which if you remember is Demo Power Automate. So from here, I'm just going to type Demo Power Automate. You can put in the description, especially if you have a lot of these lists, you probably want to, but for our demo today, I'm just going to skip this part because it's not required. You could show in your SharePoint site navigation, this is just a demo, so I'm going to uncheck that here. Once I go ahead and create our list, we have some blank columns, the automated column that's automatically going to be created. But what we really want to do is have a place for this information to be stored. So what I'll do here is I'm going to go look at our name, email, why you're reaching out to us today, and I'm going to create columns with those exact same text names. Give me 1 second here while I just hide the pop-ups for the webinar. And let's start. So we had a name column. So I'm going to create a name column here and then save it. You'll see that pop up right there. You'll also see that we have another column, and I believe that was email. So I'm going to add that in here as well. And then I'm going to add another one. Rather than typing it out, it's also easier just to go back in your question, Control-C, right-click, copy, and then you can paste it in here. And you'll see why later, why we're using the same exact name. It's going to help us connect both the source to our destination here. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. If you wanted to, you could go ahead and create any other columns from the information you have here in your forms. What you could also do is if you want to edit the data later on, maybe add some metadata columns, you can do that. There is no requirement to have the same number, the same type of columns as you have in your form within the database where that information is going to be stored. So you can always add more later. On top of that, it's also very flexible. So if you say, we forgot to add in another piece of information we need to collect from our form, you could always add a new piece to that form later, add in a column here, and then reconnect it. So it is very flexible. Personally, I just want to point out that if you do keep your columns the same name for the information that you want into the database, you're going to make your life much easier as we get into Power Automate. So we have our form. We have our database where we want that information to go into. Let's go ahead and connect the two. How we're going to do that is go back to the Power Automate, the point of today's call. If this is your first time using Power Automate and you're really not sure where to start, I highly suggest going to the templates on the left-hand side of your screen. And from here, it'll give you some examples of flows that you might want to use. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of these templates already created. So why build the wheel when it's already here? You can see none of these really are looking like something that we want to use. Well, let's go up to the Search Templates button and box here, and let's just type in form for forms. You can see here that notify me and store responses when a student completes a quiz. We're not in the education tenant, so that probably won't be something that we want to do. Maybe there's one over here that's been used 317,000 times, and that is record form responses in SharePoint. This sounds like a good example. You could click into it and it already has it pre-built for you. Today, rather than using one of our templates, wanted to show you from scratch how we're going to do this. So let's click on the create rather than the templates here. When we go to create, you're gonna have a couple of choices that you can choose. Well, anytime that this form is submitted, we want that information to automatically go into our SharePoint list. So what we're going to use here, and I'm just going to close you down a little bit, we are going to use the automated cloud flow. We want it to happen on its own. We don't want to have to click a button. We'll make our life much easier. So let's go to the automated cloud flow, and I'm going to go and call it Demo Power Automate. Heads up, once you really get into Flow Power Automate and start using it quite a bit, it is suggested that you use a naming template that you can easily find all of your flows, because when you do have 100 in there, some maybe with the same name saying SharePoint to, or forms to SharePoint, you're gonna get confused which one is which. So once you get in here, you start using it in real life, get that naming convention down, whether that's putting in the name of the site, the name of the form, the date you created it, all of that good stuff, just to make it easier to find it. Microsoft AI, Cortana back here already knows exactly what I want to do because she saw me open up forms. I find this extremely just really cool that it already knows that I'm probably going to want when a new response is submitted, which is exactly the one that we want to use today. So let's go ahead and create our new flow. And it already added in our trigger, what's going to cause this flow to run. We've created our form already, so all we really need to do is drop down here and let me find our Demo Power Automate form. Look at that, it's already on top because that is the last form I had open. If you haven't noticed yet, it makes it pretty easy here. What we then want to do is we want to create a new step. So what is going to happen? This is going to trigger it. Well, what do we want it to do? We want it to go to a SharePoint list, so I'm just going to start by typing in SharePoint. You can see some of the items or some of the triggers that you can use. What we could do is we could create an item, which would be creating an item in that SharePoint list. Scrolling down really quickly here, you can see all of the other things that you can do. We do want to create an item, so let's go ahead, find that here again, and select it. Once we do that, it's going to ask, well, where is this list that you created? How can we connect it? So we're going to go to our site address here. It already knows that I had this site open recently. I know personally that the list is on this site here, so I'm going to select it. It'll automatically query and see which list do we have on the site. And there we go. Here's our Demo Power Automate. It will also pull in any of those columns that we created into the flow. So that is why we first built the form. We built the questions in our form, and then we built the list because we want that to automatically pull in here within the flow. So if I go here and click into the title, you're going to want to choose the dynamic content that's coming from the form. But what you'll notice here, and why I purposely skipped to this part because it happens to a lot of people the first time they use Power Automate, is why aren't our form response boxes showing up? And the reason is that we didn't tell Power Automate to get the form information yet. So think of it very logically as in this needs to happen, and then this needs to happen. And it makes sense that first we actually need to get that form information to then put it into SharePoint. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on the plus in between, and I'm going to add a pre-action step to tell it to get form or get response details. You're going to choose the same thing as before, where we are going to choose our form ID as our Demo Power Automate. And right there, the response ID, we want it to be the response ID that came in when that form was submitted. So all you need to do is put that in there. And now if we go back to our create item, go to some of these boxes, you will see that we can now do a one-to-one, source being the form, destination being into SharePoint, where we want it to go. So the title here, if you wanted to, you could have you could put in the title of the form. Maybe we want to call it Demo Power Automate. You can put that as text, or just to show you here for our demo, let's just put in the name field twice. We can then put in the email part, and then why are you reaching out to us today? We're gonna go ahead and save this flow. That's all we need to do for this first step, and see if it works. We're gonna do a little bit of Q&A here to make sure that the responses, the steps that we created are correct. The best way to do that is go to our form. I'm just going to copy the link to it, and let's fill it out. Here we go. So today I'm going to put in my name. I'm going to put in my email here, or my demo email that I'm using. Why are we reaching out to us today? And I'm going to say for an awesome Power Automate demo. Let's go ahead and submit our form. And if our flow was created correctly, what we should see here is if I click on the back arrow to get to the overall view of this flow, you can see that 9 seconds ago when I submitted the form, it succeeded. Let's do the final test here. Let's go to our list, which if you remember is our database, and you can see this information has come right over to us. So it was a success. Information was entered into the form, automatically saved here. If you wanted to, you could then add in another column, or let's even do a choice here. And maybe we want to do a column called reviewed, just so we know if someone's looked at it, if they saw it, and we could maybe do a choice as pending. We could maybe do a choice as in progress. And then the final one here is going to be reviewed. So even though I created a new column here, when that form is submitted, it's not automatically going to be added because we didn't put it in our flow. I could then go ahead and edit in grid view, very similar to Excel. And maybe now that we saw it, it's looking good, everything came in, we can mark it as reviewed so your own internal members now know that there's no more action steps or anything needed for this form that was submitted or this form entry. I went through Power Automate quite quickly. There is a lot of different connectors, destinations, a lot of things that you can do with it, but hopefully it just shows you that maybe that you're using a manual paper form at the moment that you have to fill out. It's taking up time. You then have to scan it, put it digitally. Here you don't have to worry about it. You have an easy way for you to go in, see the list of all entries from that form. Or what if we wanted to do something as in maybe you have a new client that's coming on board, or you have a new partner or a new customer. What we could also do with this is let's go back to our flow. You can edit it at any point, update it, and maybe we want to create another step in here. Once that item is created in SharePoint, maybe we also want to create a folder to store all of the information that you're going to be adding for that client, that customer, that person that now submitted it. And we're going to choose a new folder. Find that same site that we used before, which is our demo site here. Find the library or the document repository that it's all going to be saved in. In this case, I have quite a few here, as you can see. Let's just put it into documents, the main root level. And maybe we just want to have the folder be the name of that folder, or the name of the person that's submitting it, that's putting in that information being the name of the folder. It was that easy. Now you don't have to go into SharePoint, create a new folder, put in their name, if that's going to be done automatically. And now if you have documentation from your email, from Teams, anywhere you might be communicating with this person that just filled out the form, you can now just drag and drop the files right into SharePoint in that folder. This is really just kind of showing you the tip of the iceberg here. If I added a new step, I also want to show you that there are third-party APIs as well. If you don't like Microsoft Forms, maybe you want to use a Cognito form. So if I search for Cognito, we can use that as a third-party form entry with dynamic information, show this, if that, then this. Otherwise, maybe you're using Salesforce. You can see that there are even flows, triggers for Dynamics, for Salesforce. It really is similar to a Zapier if you've used that before, but one of the biggest benefits of Power Automate here is if you have a Microsoft 365 license, you already have access to this. You're not paying anything extra for it. It's really just jumping in, start getting your hands dirty, building flows, seeing what you can do with it. And 9 times out of 10, there is a way to do it. My last caveat that I would just show is if you do run a flow, you see it as a failed flow, that's not the end of the world. You can always go back in, edit it, update it. If you then want to have a notification, we can even do something like send an email. So then you specifically know, or you can email the client saying, thank you for filling out this form. You could send it internally to know that that process is completing. You could send it to a Teams message if that's what you're using. There really is, the sky's the limit here when it comes to what you can do with it. On top of Power Automate, and I just want to go back here to the templates that I showed you before, just note that if you are going to be using things like Outlook, if you're using things like SharePoint, it will require you to log in to your Microsoft account to use all of these. So if you first get here, it'll tell you to choose your region. It will tell you to log in. That's all a part of the process. But once you have that flow running, we created that demo flow. There's really nothing else that you need to do. We set it as a cloud automated flow, so I can be content knowing that it's going to run, it's going to work as needed. And even if something were to happen, let's say that your flow isn't working at the moment, you could always go back into previous runs. You can resubmit it, make sure that everything is working, and it will tell you if something is not. All along the path here, there are checks to make sure that everything's working correctly, as well as if there are any errors when you're doing it, it will just pop up and let you know. So it is user-friendly. Don't be afraid of it. I highly recommend everybody start using it because even in our own world, it saves so much time. It really cuts out that manual work and effort that really shouldn't be on your plate. That's why we have technology. Use the technology at your fingertips. If you have that Microsoft license, it's here. And I absolutely love it, if you can't tell from my voice. So that was my demo. I know I only had about 30 minutes today, so I ran through quite quickly. Katie, is there anything else you might want me to cover while we're still in this kind of demo mode here?
I don't think there's anything else to cover in a demo. I think the important thing for people to know is that you can see up at the top for the search for helpful resources. So if you kind of have an idea, you can see how smart Power Automate is. Kind of as you get searching within Power Automate, it'll make suggestions and it'll try and help you out and try and steer you, where it thinks that you're going. There, like Rafe pointed out, there are tons and tons of templates. You can build your own template. So if you have anything manual that you are spending way too much time on and you're like, man, is there a way to do this? You can look in Power Automate, you can give us a call, and we are happy to talk through it with you, and we can get you to where you want to go, because I'm sure there is a way with using Power Automate. We absolutely love it. So it's been a huge time saver for us.
Mm-hmm. And practice makes perfect, right? The more that you use it, the more you understand the little quirks, making sure that each step is created as it needs to. That's really the tricky part, but once it clicks, once you get it, you can see we did this flow, which could potentially save hours through the course of a year in 20 minutes. So it is user-friendly. It's just learning all of really how to use it and how to build it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Rafe. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Hopefully I didn't go too quickly. I know there's a lot to it, but wanted to make sure I didn't overstay my welcome.
Nope, good to go. So thank you so much. And for everyone on our call, I just want to remind you that on September 1st at 1 o'clock, we'll be talking about Microsoft Forms and bookings. So that's what we have coming up next. So thank you so much, and we hope you have a great rest of the week.
Have a wonderful week, everyone.
Visit www.tomtechtoday.com/training webinar. We look forward to seeing you there.